Hey everyone, this is Cameron. As you can see, Bodhi's not here and I'm not on the couch. If you are watching on YouTube, you're seeing me in the office where I record my streams and where I do my daily work. That is because I'm recording this after we recorded this week's episode 19, because we did something special after the episode and we are going to put that in after. I will be back in this exact spot to break that down. But if you are listening on wherever you get your podcast, make sure to stick around. And if you're on YouTube, we'll be back here at the very end of the episode. So stay tuned. Thank you so much.
They put a chip in my vaccine. They're listening to me.
Who?
The government.
What branch of the government?
The FDA.
The FDA. We're going to make you healthy.
I don't want it. Leave me be.
If you're listening in, Bodhi is currently in a tinfoil hat, so switch over to the YouTube, like and subscribe, and watch this.
This is not a tinfoil hat. This is a government ray deflecting cap. They will not listen to me.
Okay. It reminds me of how RFK wants to ban cell phones in schools.
There will be no Tik Tok in the classroom. Well, that was pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of killed that shit.
You got when you do it, like gyrate a little bit, so it kind of like you're like shivering. Like try to shiver and do it at the same time. But it's like banning schools or phones in schools, good. And then he's like,
"Is it pink?"
No. It's like, oh, good. We're concerned about the attention span of our kids. And then he's like, no, actually, I don't want your kids getting cancer from 5G. And it's like, oh.
Yeah, built-in benefit of this hat. I don't get 5G cancer.
You also...
Because it enters through the top of your head.
What else is tinfoil used to, like, obscure? Isn't it used in, like, a security measure for something? Can't you use it to, like, deflect, like...
Like X-rays?
Like at TSA?
Yeah.
Like, couldn't you, like, line your suitcase with tinfoil and they wouldn't be able to see into it?
You can...
We are mentioning the airport way too much.
I think for X-rays, it's lead that you use to block it.
Okay, I'll just go get some lead.
At the same time, it's like it goes through an X-ray. They're just going to see a blank, just like a blank spot that is mysteriously shaped like a bomb in somebody's suitcase.
Well, surely it'll be the TSA agent's first minute on the job.
Did you see that movie? I think it was like a straight to Netflix movie, but it was about like the TSA agent and like the nerve gas. Yeah.
Yes.
That shit looks good. I want to watch it.
Very good.
Yeah.
Did you ever see Trap?
Nope.
It's M. Night Shyamalan's newest movie. It's the one where he's at a concert with his daughter and like he's a serial killer. The main character's a serial killer and the whole concert's set up as a trap to like arrest him. But they don't know it's like specifically him. They just know that the killer would be at this concert.
Well, that makes it a lot easier.
It is the most Looney Tunes ass movie. It's like just escape. Like they arrest him, he escapes. They arrest him, he escapes. They arrest him, he escapes. Like it's just like 2 hours of essentially like Roadrunner and Coyote. It's fucking great. That is exactly what the airport movie, the TSA movie is. It's just like 2 hours of like this like just cat and mouse game in an airport, and it's so over the top and absurd, and like people actually die and people just go on with their business.
Dude, oh my god, I was going to sleep last night. I went to bed way too late. I was up playing Magic until like 3 a.m. because I forgot we had this today. I was like, I don't have anything going on tomorrow. I'm just going to stay up all night playing Magic with my friends. And then I was like, oh, I do have something going on tomorrow. But as I was going to bed, I'm like laying down, I'm about to fall asleep, and then my brain makes me hear the most realistic gunshot sound that I could possibly imagine. And I was like, oh, I guess I thought I was being shot at.
Did you wake up like Anakin Skywalker in episode 3, shirtless and muscular out of nowhere?
Yeah, and a little sweaty.
A little sweaty.
Yeah.
Robot arm.
Yeah. Oh, God, I wish.
Pregnant wife.
I want the robot arm.
Not the pregnant wife.
No, I do not want a child.
Oh, God. But we want you to leave a rating and review on this episode of the Learning Curve podcast. Sick. Let's introduce ourselves before we get into this, because this is going to be kind of a monster of an episode.
Okay. I am Bodhi, aka Shrinky Dink, aka slightly taller RFK Jr.
Slightly tall. How tall is he?
I don't know. I'm just assuming I'm taller than him.
Throw out a number. I'm going to Google it.
I'm going to guess 5'7". He doesn't seem like he'd be that tall.
Oh, wait, hold on. He's a junior, right? Yeah.
I thought you were going to say a different word that started with J. And I was like, why does that matter for his height?
He is 6'1".
No, he's not.
He's the tallest member of the Trump administration.
No, he's not. Trump's like 6'9".
No, Trump is 6'3", but he wears platforms. So he's like 5'10". Do you want to... I probably should introduce myself. I forgot my true crime cap. Wow, it's a tongue twister. I was going to put it right here for us to just have on display. But imagine there's a true crime cap right here. It says FBI, because I'm a white woman delving into true crime almost.
I'm going to overlay the Mario Goatsy picture just in the middle of us.
The what?
You never seen Mario Goatsy?
No, I don't know what that is.
Oh boy. Do you know what Goatsy is to begin with?
No.
It's when you bend over and spread your asshole.
What is with you on this right now? For context, I sent Bodhi a wallpaper for his phone, and he was like, is it me, or does it look like this skull is bending it over and spreading whole?
Dude, it's like the hood on it looks like somebody's legs, and then it's got like a logo in the middle of it, so it looks like someone's asshole. That's
a full prolapse.
No, that's him spreading his asshole.
Yeah, that's a full prolapse.
I sent that picture to Ted Cruz.
Over text.
Yeah.
Nice.
Because he texted me, look.
And he never responded.
No, I stopped getting messages from Ted Cruz after that.
I love that. He likes porn on Twitter. I don't know why he wouldn't respond to that.
He draws the line at iMessage.
Not into Italians. Okay. Well, as you can see if you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. I have a stack of papers in front of me that I had to clip together with a binder clip.
There's a little white powder hidden between them, so when he opens it, it'll dump onto his lap.
It's actually just full of glitter.
Oh.
No. I had to take extensive notes on this. There's 9 pages here.
God, fuck.
I did take Cornell notes, so that's probably why.
Dude, I hated that shit.
I can't take regular notes anymore. Whatever.
Just write words on a piece of paper.
So today you'll notice Bodhi's tinfoil hat because
of the vaccine.
Because of the vaccine. And because we're gonna delve into cults. So we're gonna cover Scientology today. And stay tuned for the end of the episode where we may or may not be infiltrating the Church of Scientology today.
Shout out my boy Tom Cruise.
Shout out to... We'll go over the celebrities that are in it too. There's
Alec Baldwin.
I don't know if Alec Baldwin is one.
No, it's not Alec Baldwin. It's John Travolta. Because I know his kid had like some preventable disease, but because he's a Scientologist, he didn't believe in natural medicine, and then his kid had a seizure in the shower and died.
He is a Scientologist, and he's also gay.
Is he?
And bald, yeah.
John Travolta's bald now?
Cruise,
oh, yeah, he is.
Or John Cruise. John Travolta.
John Cruise.
John Travolta allegedly is gay.
Okay.
I have to kind of put allegedly. Okay, so I don't even know where to begin with this. You said you didn't know a whole lot about Scientology, but you knew like the gist of it.
Yeah, I know the medicine thing, the books thing, and then the John Travolta thing.
Okay. So in my research, I started doing research, right? And I was like, okay, well, let me start with the founder, whose name is L. Ron Hubbard. And his name is really Lafayette.
Mm-hmm.
Ron Hubbard, which is, I think, a really like hard-ass name. I don't think someone like him should deserve that name.
I'm related to a pirate named Lafayette.
There's an Orville Peck song called Lafayette. I wonder if he's writing about L. Ron Hubbard. Orville Peck, if you're listening, tap in. it quickly became apparent to me that there was no way to separate Scientology from L. Ron Hubbard. Like it literally is just him. So I'm just going to go through the entire timeline of Scientology and how we got to its present thing, because there's some wild shit in here. I'll do a brief overview of L. Ron Hubbard, but then we'll kind of go back to the beginning. There's a lot of mention of sexual abuse in this. Alleged sexual abuse. So if that's something that you're uncomfortable listening, it's later in the episode, so I will give a little shout when that's coming. Bodhi has not read any of this, so he's going to react in real time because it gets pretty crazy. The entire thing, essentially, you know that meme where it's like, source, I made it up?
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of starts with one of those, and instead of being like, oh yeah, man, I was caught in a lie, it kind of just devolves into a cult.
So exactly like Mormonism.
So I was reading this and I was like texting Shawn about how I was doing this notes, and he was like, and I called it the Church of Scientology, and he was like, it's not a church, it's a cult. And I was like, well, unfortunately for you, he's not Catholic, but unfortunately, I was like, unfortunately for you, I'm reading this and it is structured very similarly to the Catholic Church. And I get that most major religions are cults, but I will say that there are Catholics out there who just genuinely like believe in God and, you know, do their prayers and go on about their business. But it's very hard to find a Scientologist who's not a cult member.
Yeah.
So, allegedly a cult member.
I mean, Scientology is a government recognized religion, right?
So,
they get the tax exemption and all that.
So that's actually part of the story, because it actually lost its tax exemption and then got it back. So
damn it.
We're kind of getting into spoilers here. So let's get into it so we're not jumping ahead here. Okay. So we'll start with L. Ron Hubbard. Like I said, his name was Lafayette. He was born March 13th, 1911. In a callback to our horoscope episode, he's a Pisces, so do with that what you will.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know Pisces people.
Pisces.
Pisces, yeah. He was born in Nebraska, but he spent most of his time in Helena, Montana, when he was a kid. His father was in the Navy during the 1920s, and he would eventually follow in his father's footsteps and also join the Navy during World War II as a naval officer. And where this story really starts to begin is when he went to George Washington University for engineering. That's in DC. It's a pretty like big university. I looked it up because I was like, I could have sworn there was a George Washington University that is like a scam.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the John Adams Academy. That's like a private thing.
Okay.
So George Washington University is like a well-recognized institution. He dropped out of there after a year, and he became an author of pulp fiction. Not the movie. I was super confused by this. Do you know what pulp fiction is? Not the movie, like the actual like genre of pulp fiction.
Nope.
So I looked it up. It's quote it's stories that are quote violent, lurid stories in cheaply printed magazines. So essentially, like the movie Pulp Fiction
is like a collection of violent stories.
Is a pulp fiction. So
gotcha.
Yeah,
makes sense.
Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to the beginning here. So he was born to his mother, Ladora May Waterbury, who was a teacher and a government clerk, and his father, Ross Hubbard, who was a low-ranking Navy officer. The first red flag is that he's an only child, which, if you know any only children, you know that they get a little crazy. Like I said, he was born in Nebraska, and then the family moved to, I think it's pronounced Kalispell, Montana, and then relocated to Helena, Montana. And then when his father was deployed to Guam, in the Navy, his mother actually joined the father over in Guam with L. Ron Hubbard, but they lived in China for some reason for a little bit, and like Southeast Asia, and then went to Guam. I don't know what the whole like thing of that was. Now, as I'm going through this, I want you to kind of keep in mind the patterns that are going to be emerging, because you'll see that like it's literally just a set of patterns. Like he's doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. So when he was in high school, he wrote for a school newspaper, but he got dropped from the program because he had bad grades.
Okay.
He was like a notoriously bad student. in high school, he wanted to join the Navy as he was getting ready to graduate, but he failed the entrance exam. And so his parents sent him to this like preparatory school to basically help prepare him for the Naval Academy exam so he can retake it.
How do you fail to join the U.S. military? Like, unless you're missing a leg.
Well, and this is the whole thing, is this was back in the 20s. This would be like the late 20s, maybe early 30s. Because he was born, 1911, so 1928. Yeah. 1929. So yeah, like,
so like right after World War One.
Right when the Depression hit too.
Yeah.
I guess because we were more of an isolationist nation in the Great Depression up until World War II. Mm-hmm. Maybe we were cutting back on the military. I don't know. But either way, he failed it. At this preparatory academy, and this is where the medical stuff starts to come in. So at this preparatory academy, he started complaining of eye strain, and he was actually diagnosed with myopia, which is nearsightedness.
Okay.
So he was diagnosed with something that was like actually like tangibly an issue for the Navy.
Okay.
But in a later like journal entry to himself, he admitted to using the myopia as an excuse to get out of the Naval Academy. But it wasn't really clear if he was saying like, I lied and like fudged the test for myopia, or if he was saying like, I let myself be held back by my myopia. And that's like a huge issue, because you'll see how all of this comes to be. The latter seems like it's more likely, but it could be the former. So after this preparatory academy, he didn't end up going into the Navy just yet. He did a transfer program to George Washington University. While he was there at George Washington in his first year, he was constantly on academic probation because of bad grades, and he wrote for their newspaper. He organized a trip, and this is kind of where the dropout happens. He organized a trip to the Caribbean for students.
Okay.
He was going to get Caribbean with it. Mind if a white boy gets Caribbean with it? But there was something that happened with the planning of the trip. They basically left him to do all the planning, and he just dropped the ball completely, and the trip never happened. The students burned an effigy of him.
Damn.
They like hated him because of this. And because they bullied him so relentlessly, he ended up dropping out. So failed out of the Naval Academy twice, or failed to get into the Naval Academy twice, dropped out of college. After he dropped out of college, this was in like the early 30s or whatever, he was living in DC, and he started consulting with psychiatrists. So clearly he understood that there was something going on with him.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up talking to these people called lay analysis psychiatrists. So you know how like Kaiser will have like actual doctors, but those doctors will be like, take some ashwagandha about it, or do some meditation about it.
Yeah.
So it's like that. So basically these were naval psychiatrists who were like actual like doctors, but they practice lay analysis, which is like a psychiatric evaluation, but they weren't certified to do that.
Hell yeah.
So they kind of were just winging it. These psychoanalyses that were done on him basically yielded these results that gave credence to all the concerns that he had about himself. And so he became skeptical of medical diagnoses, because the medical diagnoses were like, oh, you have myopia, right? So like they were telling him, oh, you have all these medical conditions. But the lay analysis was telling him like, you just need to like be stronger. Like get over it, essentially, right? So
why are you depressed? Just smile.
No, that's pretty much what it was, right? So he became skeptical of like any professional medical diagnosis and medical professional because of these analyses. And he essentially got like a good prognosis from these lay analyses. So they basically were just like, you're going to be fine. Mm-hmm. And he was like, well, why didn't anyone tell me that before? At the same time, he ended up rekindling a relationship that he had previously had with a woman named Margaret Polly Grubb. Sorry, I couldn't read my own handwriting. Yikes. This was in 1933. Now, just a kind of fair warning, there's multiple women in this story that are like, they just kind of ebb and flow out of the story.
Get that dick, girl.
No. So he ends up marrying this girl.
Okay.
They were both fans of aviation, which is why they were like attracted to each other, which was weird. They got married in 1933, the same year that they got into a relationship. And over the course of the next couple of years, they ended up having 2 children. They had an L. Ron Hubbard Jr. and Catherine May. After they had these kids, the family was constantly like broke. They had no money because most likely, and I couldn't find any testimony about this, Catherine May probably wasn't working because this was the 30s and women were supposed to be in the kitchen in the 30s. And L. Ron Hubbard was a loser. He dropped out of school, wasn't in the Navy, had nothing going for him. So they were like mooching off of family members to survive. They were like living with some people. But in 1934, he ended up trying his hand at the Pulp Fiction thing, and he actually became like a super popular author in the late 30s, early 40s. He wrote a bunch of short stories. He wrote a couple novels, and he was actually ended up being praised by Isaac Asimov and Ray Bradbury.
Okay.
Like, that's how good of a writer he was.
I don't know who those people are.
Isaac Asimov wrote the Foundation series, which is like widely regarded as like the first science fiction book of all time.
Okay.
Like, it is like, if you watch Star Wars, Star Trek, Fallout, 2001: A Space Odyssey, like any piece of science fiction that is made, you'll be like, oh, they just took this from Foundation.
Okay.
Like, fully from Foundation. Coruscant on Star Wars is Trantor on Foundation. Like, carbon copy. Like, completely plagiarized. So, I mean, it's an ode to Isaac Asimov, but you know what I'm saying. Like, it's very influential. So in 1940, in July, he ended up having another medical procedure done. This was a dentistry thing. So I don't know what he was doing, but they had to put him under for it. So he had anesthesia and it almost killed him. And so he had this near-death experience. And that is what jolted him into writing a story that was like an analogy or an allegory for this near-death experience. And that really cemented his like place in like fame as far as being an author goes. So this is when Ray Bradbury and Asimov like started praising him because he wrote this like really bizarre kind of like horror Pulp Fiction story about it. And so then in 1941, because he was like prolific and everything like that, he reapplied to the Naval Academy, and he actually got accepted. And
just because he was popular?
I think it was probably part of it, but I think most likely because he believed his life was on an upward trajectory.
Okay.
He like got in his own head, and you'll see it. Like, you'll see the book that he wrote that started Scientology, because I read the book from front to back, and it like the premise is like, okay, like that kind of makes sense, but there's no science behind this, so don't call this a science.
God damn it, we lost him.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about what's in it later. Okay, so what happened in 1941?
I think my great grandma was born.
Well, okay. What happened?
No, she was born
7th,
in the middle of the Depression.
What happened on December 7th, 1941?
I went for a nice walk.
Okay.
Pearl Harbor. Bombs started falling from the sky.
There we go. So he applied to the Naval Academy 1941. Pearl Harbor happened, and he immediately got deployed to the Pacific Theater. So he worked his way up from a lieutenant junior grade to an intelligence officer in the Navy. I have no idea how the Navy's structured, except for the whole, gay sex thing. Tap in gay sex Navy officers.
I mean, back then, intelligence officers weren't that hard of a role to get into just because we had so fucking many.
Well, so this is the whole thing. So as an intelligence officer, he was given command over a number of ships, and it went horribly wrong for everyone. So the first ship that he has control over is called the Don Isidro. He was accused of sending it 3,000 miles out of its way to its destination. So they had like this plot, and he was like, nope, you're going this way, and it added 3,000 extra miles onto the trip.
Just a slight detour.
Yeah, because you'll see that this guy's kind of just an idiot. So that was like the first problem that he ran into. So they relieved him of duty from that boat, and they gave him a patrol boat that he would be in charge of. And this patrol boat was in the Boston harbor. So they brought him back stateside, and they were like, we're going to keep an eye on you. He was given control of it, but he was relieved from that because the, is it called commandant? Is that the title, or is it commandant?
Commandant.
The commandant of the Boston shipyard basically was like, this guy's a fucking idiot. Do not give him control of a boat. I don't know what generated that, but
he sent it 4,000 miles out of its way
in the Boston harbor.
Yeah.
They dumped more tea. So they relieved him of duty for that, and they were like, well, third time's a charm, right? So clearly we just had the best and brightest running the Navy in the 40s and during World War II. So who knows how we won Iwo Jima and the Pacific Theater, because in 1943 they gave him control of a submarine chaser.
That's what I'm talking about.
Within 5 hours of gaining command of this, he believed that he had engaged an enemy, like detected and engaged an enemy sub, and over the next 68 hours unloaded all of the ammunition at this sub in engaging in combat with it, only for the investigation to find out that he had just detected a magnetic deposit at the bottom of the ocean. 68 hours of just bombardment into like nothing. Just shooting some fish.
George Bush would have loved this guy.
So basically, because they couldn't verify whether or not there was an actual sub they were engaging and they had to do this investigation, there was like a month-long delay, right? Because they're doing this investigation. In that month, he also, in this submarine chaser, accidentally fired upon Mexican territory. And remember, in World War II, Hitler tried to get Mexico to invade the US. Yeah. So this was like Cuban Missile Crisis level of like bad. So at this point they were like, okay, you're done. You're no more ships for you. So they pull him out from the ships and they transferred him to the USS Algol, Algol, and for like whatever, he was just stationed on the ship. I don't know what his role was. He just was there. They ended up discharging him, and at discharge he basically made this accusation that he had credible evidence of some kind of sabotage on the ship. Nothing ever came from it. So they ended up discharging him. And then as he was getting discharged, now keep in mind, remember he complained about the myopia. He started complaining about conjunctivitis, which is pink eye.
Okay.
So he was
eating booty.
Urethral discharge, had chlamydia, ulcers, malaria, and back pains.
I mean, he's carrying the entire Navy through the war, so I understand why his back's hurting.
Yeah, clearly. He was defeating the Mexican army preemptively.
Defeating the Mexican army in those goddamn magnetic deposits.
Me when I find the lead for my suitcase. So he basically complained about all these at discharge, and I think it was probably to be like, you can't discharge me, I have medical issue, you know.
You can't discharge me, I'm discharging.
Now, here's the whole thing. We'll get into this later too, because we'll talk about it. The Navy was giving him a pension, so I don't think he got like dishonorably discharged. Yeah. I think they were just like, hey, thank you. Like, we don't need you anymore. Like, you have done a great service to your country.
It definitely wasn't an honorable discharge, but there's like because there's honorable, dishonorable, and then there's like a neutral one. And I'm pretty sure it sounds like they just gave him the neutral one.
Could have not renewed his contract. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how it worked back then. Josh should be here for this. This is Josh's. This is World War II, the Pacific Theater, and military ranks.
I mean, where'd Jimbo at? He was in the Navy.
That's true. Back in the 40s.
Was he really in the 40s? I don't know, man. The guy's kind of always been old for as long as I remember him.
It's true. Okay. So after this whole list of complaints that he had, he later wrote to himself in the memo, quote, "Your stomach troubles you used to keep the Navy from punishing you." So
wait, what?
This is like just an excerpt, like a quote.
Oh, okay.
So essentially he was saying that he used his stomach troubles to keep the Navy from punishing him. So it sounds like they were gonna, like, he knew he was gonna get discharged, and to like avoid that, he was like, "Oh, I'm sick," and then they were like, "Oh, we can't."
What was this guy's name again?
L. Ron Hubbard.
L. Ron. So they were like, "Mr. Hubbard, come to the poop deck," and he was like, "I can't poop," and then they're like, "Okay."
I think that's what he was alluding to. Again, you'll see how batshit crazy he gets at the end. So there's no, and all of these quotes are like journal entries that he wanted released after his death. So there's no context. There's just quotes.
So he's just making shit up.
Yes. So remember that wife that he married?
Yeah.
Yeah. So after he was discharged, he refused to return to DC where his family lived. Just didn't want to go.
God forbid a white boy catch a vibe.
So he moved to Pasadena with his friend John Jack Whiteside Parsons.
Okay. If my homie has the middle name of Whiteside, I'm staying away from you. I'm going to open his closet and I'm going to see some pointy garments in there. So
Parsons was a rocket propulsion engineer.
Oh, he was a Nazi.
And a follower of the occultist Aleister Crowley. I didn't look into Aleister Crowley. I've heard his name before, but the guy sounds kind of, to me, I'm picturing 1940s Chris Angel mind freak. Gonna freak your mind and the Nazis.
He's probably just like an old school.
He's part of the occult, so he's like, you know, whatever. The occult is a wide-ranging amount of things.
Satanic panic shit from the early 2000s.
Your shirt is the occult.
I'm wearing a Crowley Aleister
Satanic
shirt.
Panic was in the 80s. I mean, it's kind of ongoing, but the big one was in the 80s. Okay, so when he moved to Pasadena, he moves in with Parsons and then immediately begins having an affair with Parsons' 21-year-old girlfriend. Now, mind you...
How old is Hubbard at the time?
So this was after the war, so post-1945.
Okay.
So he was born in 1911, so he's in his 30s.
Okay.
21 and 30-year-old, I don't, like, what do you have in common? But... both consenting adults, so do what you gotta do. It gets worse though. You'll see there's consistently younger and younger. So they ended up doing, sorry, I was trying to find my spot. They ended up doing with Parsons, him, the girl, and Parsons together tried to do this ritual called Babylon working.
Okay.
Which is a sex magic ritual to summon the deity Babylon, the supreme goddess in Aleister Crowley's whole pantheon of occultists. So they tried to summon some kind of sex god.
You're not you when you're horny.
Didn't really work because, you know, we don't got sex gods running around here.
Speak for yourself.
And so after this didn't work, this is when he started to write affirmations. It's a document, like an essay kind of thing, meant to essentially hypnotize himself out of all these ailments that he was complaining about: the back pain, the malaria, the conjunctivitis, the fucking stomach pains, the ulcers, everything.
So he's just writing on a piece of paper, "Your dick doesn't squirt cheese."
Yeah. So essentially, he was trying, and we'll get into it when he writes Dianetics, which is the book that started it all.
Okay.
But he essentially was trying to essentially be like, stay positive, like stay positive and nothing will come of this. And again, this is because he doesn't trust medical professionals because of those psychoanalyses that he got back in the day.
Okay.
At this point, all three, Parsons, Hubbard, and the girl, invested their life savings to flip yachts. Yeah. So they were in Pasadena. They bought yachts on the East Coast. Hubbard was supposed to go out to the East Coast, get them, and drive them back over, and then they were going to flip them and sell them for more than they bought them for. Hubbard immediately stole all the money from the girl and Parsons, and tried to convince the Navy to let him do a world cruise with these yachts. The Navy obviously was like, no. And Parsons and Hubbard just ran off with the money.
Why would he go to the Navy for that? Can you not just buy a boat and go around the world?
I think he probably wanted the money and then wanted the Navy to like flip it. So kind of like an USO shows.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly what again, there's a couple of like memes that can be applied to this story. The source, I made it up, and then what was the plan here, because you'll see that a lot of these things is like you didn't have a plan, you just kind of caught a car and you didn't know what to do with it. So Parsons ends up suing Hubbard for the money, but only got back some of the money, and he ended up having to sell his mansion and just went completely broke. Because basically Hubbard ran him through the gambit of legal proceedings, and you'll see that that's a common thread with Scientology is the legal proceedings. They run people through the gambit. So on August 10th, 1946, Hubbard ends up marrying Parsons' girlfriend, the 21-year-old girl. Her name is Sarah. Even though he is still currently married to his first wife.
Hell yeah.
With the 2 kids. He returned to writing and became an amateur hypnotist.
Okay.
He, at this point, obviously was doing stuff that was not very lucrative, so he goes to the Navy and he asks for an increase.
What the fuck is with this fool in the Navy? Like, you got discharged. Just leave him alone.
Well, so he goes to the VA and he says, hey, can I get an increase in my pension? And also I need psychiatric treatment. So it's like, what, like, we're going back to the whole medical doctor stuff now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's unclear if they gave him that, but he ends up being arrested in San Luis Obispo in 1948 for passing a fraudulent check. And because of this, he used this as an excuse to basically be like, I'm mentally ill. And he was like, I got arrested and they threatened to throw me in jail. We should not be throwing veterans in jail because we're all very traumatized from the war.
The demons told me to cash this $2 million check.
Right. Exactly. So he becomes an advocate for keeping mentally ill veterans out of jail. I think that's a noble cause. I definitely think that back post World War II, post Vietnam, even honestly post Iraq War, soldiers are made to do things that are like not okay.
Yeah.
And I can very much see how like people snap and, you know, end up on the streets and committing crimes. And we shouldn't be putting veterans in. We should try everything we can to keep them out of jail. So at this point, because he becomes this advocate, he finds out that there is a state hospital in Georgia, in Savannah, Georgia, that is like essentially doing this mission. So he moves there and gets a job as a volunteer in a psychiatric clinic at this hospital in Savannah, Georgia. And what he writes of is he had witnessed extortion, basically where the hospital was like, we're trying to keep these veterans out of jail. Mm-hmm. Right, it's a deference program, right? He was saying that the doctors there were basically going to the families of the veterans and saying, give us money or we're going to say that this isn't working and these people need to go to jail. Nothing to like support that claim. Just made that claim. So who knows what was actually going on? I can see that happening, but it's also like L. Ron Hubbard's just a flat out liar. So who knows?
Yeah.
So at this point, we get into Dianetics, right? This is where he kind of starts to write his Dianetics book. He announces a condition called clear. Now, people with clear have perfectly functioning minds and an increased IQ and a photographic memory. So essentially, to get to clear, you have to be cured from all ailments, which, remember, he thinks are all in your head. You have ulcers, that's in your head. You have myopia, it's in your head. You have conjunctivitis from eating ass, that's in your head. Everything is in your head. So at this point, he starts to write Dianetics and he calls up his editor from his Pulp Fiction days. And he's like, hey, will you lie for me to say that I've invented a new science? And the editor's like, fuck yes. Absolutely, I will lie for you. So he goes and he puts the words out that L. Ron Hubbard has cured over 1,000 patients and got them to a point of clear. And Dianetics is published. Now, I've read Dianetics. It plagiarizes Freud. He takes Freud, who is already a controversial figure in the psychological world, and just misinterprets that. So essentially he calls recorded brain memory, so like, you know, just things that you remember and like experiences, engrams. He was foreshadowing Destiny. Oh my god. This is where I was like, you'll see there's some verbiage from Destiny. And I was like, is Destiny a Scientology thing? Like, are we already in the cult? So he calls them engrams, right? He calls the subconscious, your subconscious, the reactive mind. And basically what happens is he's saying that in Dianetics says that, and again, this is the part where I'm like, okay, I think this is all logical. Like, I understand what you're trying to say. It's just not a science. Like, it's not a proven thing. So he's saying that people get sick, ailments, from repressed memories, which are the engrams.
Okay.
So basically you get diagnosed with Ingram. You got a case of the engrams.
Fuck.
So basically your subconscious, your reactive mind retains these engrams and it keeps you from doing your best. And I think, again, like I said, there is credence to that, because if, for example, you grew up in a household where your parents are constantly fighting, you may not be an argumentative person. But like, because that's where you grew up, your subconscious mind might, you know, spout out some of that, and you might not have the best communication with your partner, and you might have to unlearn that behavior. Haley, if you're listening, don't tap in. So again, he's making very general observations, and it makes sense. So essentially, the whole cure to this is that people should share these memories with an auditor. That's what they're called, a psychiatrist, an auditor.
Okay.
To set free past traumas and free themselves, which would get them to a state of cured. So essentially, it's just like talk about your feelings, right?
Yeah, it's the guy in the tower that decodes your prime engrams. But instead of getting an exotic, you only get a 1900 power blue. Yeah. And then you dismantle it. It doesn't even give you gunsmith rank progress.
You were beat as a child.
I'm sorry, I just can't stop thinking about Destiny every time you say engrams. I'm like, there's a lot relating it to different people in the tower.
So Hubbard claims in Dianetics that all illnesses are caused by engrams and can be cured with the practice of Dianetics, right? So the book was released and it was just panned by critics. Any medical professional that got their hand on this was like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Because again, remember, he's saying essentially like, stay positive, talk about your feelings, and like convince yourself and like, you know, be positive about the situation and you will do better. And again, there's things like that, you know, if you know, are running on a treadmill and you feel yourself slowing down, you might tell yourself, I can do this, and then you do it. That makes sense. But he's essentially saying any ailment, cancer, malaria, tuberculosis, the flu, it's just in your head.
I mean, there's proof to that. Like, well, if you have cancer, a more positive, like mental attitude about things, it helps you like fight off diseases, but it doesn't cure them.
That's the whole thing is on the back end. He's saying, okay, you get cancer, be positive. And I think that's great. I think it's great to say, no, I'm a strong person. I'm a fighter. I'm going to live through this. I'm going to make it through this. I've been through worse. But he's saying, but you don't need to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
You don't need that chemotherapy.
That's the part where he's wrong.
Yeah. So critics pan this, but the readers who are not medical professionals, the people who actually, you know, like Rotten Tomatoes has like the critic score and the audience score. Mm. The audience score of the book is super high because people are like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, stay positive. But they're not understanding that he's essentially telling them, don't go to the doctor, even though it's blatantly written out in the book. Like, he's literally saying, like, you do not need the medical professional. And so because the readers like it, it's financially successful because people are buying the book and reading it and, you know, doing it. So at this point, with the revenue from that book, he sets up the Hubbard Dianetic Research Foundation, which is a nonprofit. And what are nonprofits?
Always for profit.
Tax exempt. So he sets up this nonprofit and allegedly begins embezzling the money.
That's what I'm talking about.
He was, God forbid, a white boy catch a bag.
White boy geeked up, embezzling from his nonprofit.
You know,
is he goated with the sauce?
Have you seen that guy on Twitter who's like the crypto investor and he looks like a fucking bird?
No.
Oh, I'll see if I can find him.
I try to avoid crypto investors.
People flame him all the time. Okay. So he ends up doing this conference with this nonprofit, right? Mm-hmm. Where he gives a conference on Dianetics where he claimed to have cured a woman in front of everyone. There's like 6,000 people at this conference. He goes, she has total recall now because she's reached a state of clear. They test her, and she can't remember the color of his necktie that he was wearing in front of her. So, of course, this caused the nonprofit, the Hubbard Dianetic Research Foundation, to lose all credibility. Like, the stocks just tanked. This is going to ruin the tour. And this caused a financial crisis for Hubbard and the foundation in the 50s. So right now, the whole foundation's kind of in dire straits. And at this time, L. Ron Hubbard begins cheating on Sarah, the girl the 21-year-old that he cheated on his wife with. Mind you, he's still married.
Twice.
Cheats on Sarah, and Sarah begins cheating on him. So they just have an open relationship. That's pretty much what it is. So Sarah and her lover, the guy that she's cheating on Ron with, yeah, L. Ron Hubbard. I'm gonna call him Ron. Him Ron. They end up consulting a psychiatrist about L. Ron Hubbard. So this guy goes to a psychiatrist, like, "Hey, my girlfriend and her husband's a little insane, dude." So my
girlfriend's husband. Yeah, it's so funny.
Cuck of the century. So they go to a psychiatrist and they're like, "Hey, this guy's kind of batshit insane. Like, he's very like, like he's going down the tube fast." And so the psychiatrist is like, "You know what? You're absolutely fucking correct. Let's get him hospitalized." Didn't consult once with Hubbard, just was like, "You're right. Based off of word of mouth, you are so correct. Let's hospitalize this guy." Now, of course, again, in this case, it's like wrong work, right answer kind of thing. Yeah. And so in response to this, they never hospitalize him, by the way. In response to this, he allegedly has Sarah and their daughter, that they have a daughter, by the way.
Okay. Elron and Sarah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Allegedly, he has Sarah and their daughter kidnapped. And he ends up letting Sarah go, but takes the daughter to Cuba.
Okay.
And reports Sarah and her lover to the FBI for being communists.
So he takes his daughter to a communist country and then reports his girlfriend.
When did Cuba fall to Castro?
What year are we in?
We're in the 50s. I don't know exactly what year this is, but we're in the 50s. Because the 60s is when like the Bay of Pigs happened and all that. So I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it was before then.
Either way, he's in Cuba, reports them to the FBI as communists, and the FBI says, "Huh? What?" So the FBI is like, "We don't believe you." So that goes nowhere. So eventually they're going back and forth. Sarah's trying to get the daughter back because obviously it's her daughter. And she ends up publishing she basically ends up posting a notes app apology, apologizing for the confusion, and basically says, "Hey,
my bad, I'm not communist."
Right. Like no. She lied about Hubbard to the psychiatrist.
Oh, okay.
So she basically is like, "I lied. I was just mad at Hubbard."
She said addressing the allegations.
Yeah. And then Hubbard gives the daughter back because it's like he wants to be perfect. He has to be perfect in the eyes of the public.
Okay.
Now, like, I don't know how I don't know, like, this isn't Beyonce. This isn't, Elvis. I don't know how much of a household name Hubbard was at this point.
Well, yeah. Is there any reason whatsoever, because he was gaining a little bit of traction with his Pulp Fiction career, is there any reason why he didn't just keep doing that?
He does. He's writing throughout this whole thing. Oh,
so he's still doing this while it's all going on.
Yeah, and then he kind of hard pivots to just to books on Scientology. Okay. So we'll talk about that. So as this whole saga is going on with the daughter in Cuba and shit, L. Ron Hubbard's first wife, the one that the aviation one, contacts Sarah and is like, "Hey, allegedly he also has inflicted violence upon me and threatened me, and he is batshit crazy, and you're so right. But he's never going to admit to that, and he will destroy your life. So you should probably apologize if you want your daughter back."
Oh, so that's why she did it.
Yeah. Okay. So essentially,
not even mad. Well, I mean, I guess there's no reason to be mad at her, but
you'll see as it goes along. But essentially, the first wife didn't buy into Hubbard's bullshit.
Okay.
So, and we'll talk about that as it relates to Scientology, because again, there's a full circle moment for everything in this story. It's actually kind of insane. So at this point, Dianetics is transforming fully into Scientology. The foundation basically for Dianetics, the Hubbard Dianetic Research Foundation. There's the main one out in California where he is. Other people buy into this and they open up different branches. So there's one that's opened in Wichita, Kansas, by the founder Don Purcell. He's like some rich guy. And pretty much the entire foundation is now being propped up by that Wichita, Kansas sect.
Wait, what's the guy's name? Don Purcell?
Don Purcell.
How do you spell Purcell?
P-U-R Cell. P-U-R-L-L, yeah.
Dude, he's the soap guy. He made Dawn dish soap and the Purcell hand sanitizer.
Probably, honestly. I didn't look him up.
That's crazy.
He was rich, so yeah, probably.
This man invented soap.
At this point, because the finances are flowing in from that sect, Hubbard is able to write a second book where he introduces past life regressions and the immortal soul, which he calls the Thetan. Thetan. So the immortal soul, basically what he's saying is that humans, it's reincarnation.
Okay, cool. So he's just copy pasting.
It's like reincarnation. So humans are souls who always have to inhabit a body.
Okay.
So if you die, you have to inhabit another body. And it really doesn't matter what you inhabit. You just have to inhabit another body, whether it be a rock, a plant, a human, a bear, or shark, whatever. And past life regressions basically means that you can be hypnotized to remember events in your past life.
I was a big reincarnation person as a kid. I thought it was really cool.
I mean, there's crazier religious theories out there, so who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? So the book flopped.
Damn it.
Because again, there's no credibility here.
Mm-hmm.
He's lost all credibility. So the book flops and the foundation went bankrupt, but Hubbard allegedly embezzled the money that was left from Purcell through forgery.
Hell yeah.
And he ends up losing the rights to Dianetics. He ends up immediately pivoting and saying, I discovered this new science. It's called Scientology. Which is just Dianetics rebranded because he couldn't use the Dianetics name.
Yeah.
And so there is some differences between Dianetics and Scientology, but this is kind of, again, where, like I said, remember, proof, I made it up.
Mm-hmm.
This is where he kind of doubles down on all his lies. So this is where it starts to get kind of crazy. So in Dianetics, the goal was clear, right? Clear, the state of clear.
Oh, okay.
Right. So remember, Dianetics, again, I maintain, in theory, it's a fairly standard just be positive practice. Of course, it tells you not to go to the doctor, but putting that aside, it's a 1, 2, whatever. Scientology takes it and says that there is a state called operating thetan, which is that past life regressions thing.
Okay.
Which gives you godlike powers. So essentially, he starts to promise people that they can become a god by embracing this new science, quote unquote, of Scientology.
Mm-hmm.
So he invests in this thing called the electropsychometer, or an e-meter. And essentially all it is it's like a lie detector test. Essentially, it measures the change in conductivity based on the grip that you have on two rods.
Yeah, I've heard of that thing.
Yeah, so this is kind of where people start to like, this is the base knowledge that people have. But Hubbard claims that with this new e-meter, you could reveal a person's most inner thoughts. And I'm sure that's because people were afraid to lie while holding it, because it detects changes in your sweat level, which is a lie detector test.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, Hubbard, who is still married to his first wife, has a child with the second wife, marries Sue Whip, who is an employee of the foundation. She's 20 years old. He's now probably in his 40s, because this is the 50s. Mm-hmm. So he's in his 40s. She's 20 years old.
Do we think Leonardo DiCaprio is just this guy reincarnated? Maybe he was right.
Yeah, you notice how no one ever gets over the age of 25.
Yeah. Ron Hubbard was right. You do reincarnate.
Wait, what year was Leonardo DiCaprio born in? Someone look that up.
Let me see.
Because let's see.
When did he die?
1986.
1986. Leonardo DiCaprio. 1986?
No.
Wow. It's 1974.
Damn, he's almost as old as my parents. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. Where was I? Oh, so he marries Sue Whip, and the son from his first marriage, Junior, joins him out wherever they're living in California. And he establishes, because remember the other foundation went bankrupt, the Hubbard Association of Scientologists, or HAS. And he ends up franchising it out, but HAS was the only official branch. So essentially, I'm struggling to find... It would be like if the Vatican was like, every church that is a Catholic church is not part of the Catholic Church, but they're still part of us. They're using our name.
Yeah, it's like Taco Bell.
Yeah, sure. It's like Burger King, Taco Bell, Subway.
Yeah.
So he franchises it out. And each franchise has to pay HAS, the main branch, 10% of whatever income it generates. So it kind of quickly devolves into a Ponzi scheme because people have to give stuff, and they have to buy the books, and they have to buy the electrometer, and they have to buy all this crap. And Hubbard uses that money to publish a third book called Scientology, A History of Man. In this book, he claims the subconscious, or the reactive mind, and traumatic events from your past lives carry over. He started connecting stuff back to the occult, so a lot of Aleister Crowley's shit starts making its way back into this, and again, this is where he starts doubling down on stuff from in his early life. In 1953, he incorporated HAS into a religion to avoid penalties for practicing medicine without a medical doctorate. So because they're saying, you don't have to go to the doctor because you have cancer, he incorporates it into a religion and says, oh, religious freedom. And so he gets tax exempt status, and he gets the ability to give out false medical advice.
We should do that.
The Church of Learning Curve.
The Church of Learning Curve, where we tell you the vaccines have chips in them.
You can say that now and they won't punish you. The guy in charge of everything is saying that. Okay. Because it was tax exempt, L. Ron Hubbard began taking massive payouts, and this translated, I did the conversions, was about $3 million a year for today's money. So he was making about $3 million a year from all the payouts he was taking.
Kenneth Copeland fucking clears him.
What's the guy that wouldn't let people into his church during Katrina?
Probably
Joel
Kenneth
Osteen.
Copeland.
Joel Osteen, yeah. That guy's a fucking piece of shit. If you see Joel Osteen, I'm not saying inflict violence upon him, but it would be a shame if his legs got broken. He's just a piece of shit. He's a televangelist.
Do you know who Kenneth Copeland is?
No. Is that the guy with the blue eyes?
I think he has blue eyes.
Is he like hella old looking, and he's like...
Yeah, he's like a reporter.
Said it was a demon.
Yeah, a reporter went up to him and was like, did God want you to have that private jet? Yeah, and he was like, yes. And
but his eyes like snapped. And
yeah.
He was like, yeah. I do know who that is. Okay. So... he began taking the massive payouts, and he ended up having more kids with the new wife, Sue Whip. And he became extremely vindictive at this point because he started seeing success. So because everyone's like, attacking him, oh no, you embezzled, and people got mad at it. Mm-hmm. Oh no, you lied, and people got mad at it. He became extremely vindictive because now he discovered this new science. And he adopted a motto for the church that is, quote, don't ever defend, always attack. So we're going to get into it. I know we keep saying we're going to get into it, but we have to really kind of tell the narrative here on the timeline. Essentially, this is why the church doesn't defend its views. It simply just discredits anyone that criticizes it.
Hell yeah.
And sues them into oblivion and allegedly physically attacks them and stuff like that. So you'll see. So at this point, him and Purcell are going back and forth in court because of the whole bankruptcy and shit like that. Mm-hmm. And Hubbard ends up winning back the rights to Dianetics through costly litigation. Essentially, Hubbard uses the money that he's getting from Scientology to bankroll the litigation against Purcell.
Okay.
And just basically runs him out of money to pay his lawyers. And so he was like, okay, whatever. So he ends up getting the rights to Dianetics back, and he immediately begins, at this point, anyone who is like a defector of Hubbard's ideology that like originally agreed with him, like Purcell, starts attacking them, allegedly. He specifically hones in on psychiatrists who were bashing the Book of Dianetics.
Okay.
The critics score, the people who gave it a low rating as far as a medical book. And he writes a fourth book that links psychiatry to communism. So he's back on his communist bullshit.
Hell yeah. Is he still in Cuba at this point, or came back?
He's back stateside. Okay. So then he writes a fifth book called The Fundamentals of Thought, in which he argues that life is a game and you are either a piece, a player, or a game maker. So
damn, so he's
spitting out fucking Aiden Ross, alpha Andrew Tate shit.
Yeah,
he was the original Andrew Tate.
He coined the term NPC.
L. Ron Hubbard was getting bitches.
He was, yeah. Progressively younger, it seems.
Progressively younger, and that's something that the Tate brothers have in common with him.
And at this point, since they keep marrying him, willing? ?
Well, it's a cult, so after he writes The Fundamentals of Thought, he now writes a sixth book. Good thing you have your tinfoil hat on, called All About Radiation.
That's what I'm talking about.
Where he claims that cancer and poisoning can be cured with vitamins.
Yep. Do you know how many vitamins are in tin?
Sound familiar? RFK literally got up on Congress's stand the other day and was like, don't need the COVID booster, just take vitamins.
People still, am I still supposed to be doing that?
Oh, you can't anymore.
Oh, well, I know, but no, was I supposed to have been?
Yeah, you're supposed to get one. It's like a flu shot. You just get a flu shot.
Oh.
And it doesn't hurt anymore either.
Oh.
So.
Because I think I got the 2-step normal vaccine, and then I got one booster, and then I was like...
You're supposed to get a booster every year.
I'm done.
You're supposed to get a booster every year. Okay, so at this point, this is in the late 50s. Oh, bless you.
Oh, thanks.
At this point, in the late 50s, the IRS withdraws the tax-exempt status of the church, specifically citing that Hubbard was taking too much profit from it. So this is back when the IRS...
Fuck.
Are you done?
No.
Do you need a tissue?
No.
Okay. This is back when the IRS was doing its job. Mm-hmm. So it investigated him and said, hey, for a church leader, you sure are making millions of dollars a year. Let's withdraw that tax-exempt status. So this is kind of where his life... So remember, his life kind of is valley and peaks, right? Because he got rejected, then he got accepted into the Naval Academy, then he wrote books, and then it went down because he got relieved from duty in the Navy, and then he, Dianetics, then lost it. So at this point, he's at a peak. We're going down now. Mm-hmm. So he loses that tax-exempt status, and then his son, the one that he brought along, Junior, resigns from... In 1959, resigns from any operations with the Church of Scientology. And remember what L. Ron Hubbard said about detractors.
You kill them.
Always, allegedly, always attack, never defend. So he sees this as a betrayal, and he immediately strengthens screenings within the church to identify traitors, bringing back the whole attack, don't offend thing. So this is where he starts getting super paranoid about who's in the church. Mm-hmm. He interrogated members with the e-meter, allegedly, about varying topics about such as homosexuality and the thoughts, basically his lieutenants would interrogate people about homosexual thoughts and then their thoughts on Hubbard himself. I don't really know. I couldn't find where the homosexual thoughts thing came from. That was just one of the things that they were documented as.
What year is it?
Late 50s, 1959.
Okay.
1960. But this is the whole thing, is he has never at any point to this point been overtly racist or overtly homophobic. I'm not saying that a white guy in the 60s isn't, but
it's probably just linked to Red Scare propaganda.
Probably, yeah. And so, I think that's the whole thing is gay people are currently getting attacked. So if I say that that's not something that can be in my church, then I can kind of blackmail them with that. Mm-hmm. Essentially, right? So they start interrogating people. And then in 1963, the FDA, of all places, raid his compound, and they cease a bunch of e-meters, and they cite it as illegal medical devices and a bunch of pills, unidentified pills, claiming to be cures and false medical literature. So the Book of Dianetics and stuff. I'm assuming the pills are probably just vitamins. And at this point, because of all of this crap going on, Australia actually becomes the first country to just straight out ban the religion.
Are they even in Australia?
No.
That's hella funny.
But it's getting popular enough that it starts to go worldwide. And this is coming up like literally in the next like couple sentences here. So at this point, it's a worldwide phenomenon. Like the church is like a worldwide entity. Like people know about it. Mm-hmm. But because Australia, the FDA raid and then Australia banning it, public sentiment kind of starts to shift against Scientology. This is when the general public kind of starts to look at it with a side eye. In 1965, in response to this, Hubbard strengthens the rules even more. People had to disconnect, quote unquote, from anything and anyone perceived as disruptive to the church. So this is where, like, if you were to join the church and, you know, your, you know, brother is like, hey, isn't that like a controversial church? Like, you have to drop him from your life. Right. So they will straight up tell you cut off family, cut off friends, cut off loved ones, anything like that. And they actually introduced crimes into like their official, like their equivalent of the Bible, essentially. Like
they're saying these things are crimes, or are they saying like I want you to rob a bank?
No. Like they introduced a list of punishable crimes within the church.
Oh, okay.
So they're saying like if you do this action, we consider it a punishable crime. And to police those crimes, he introduced the Guardian's Office. This is the
like, come on.
Yeah. Destiny. This was basically their combined PR/police force.
Okay.
So they dealt with all external matters, including PR and lawsuits. They would issue hundreds of lawsuits a year. Again, attack, don't defend. They did not, like, if you detracted from them, they just straight up sued you.
Okay.
They would find anything and everything to sue you about. If you spoke ill on them, and they still do this, if you speak ill on them, they will sue you.
Hell yeah.
So allegedly.
The Church of Scientology is full of a bunch of bitches.
Allegedly.
Unallegedly.
So at this point, he introduces this thing called the fair game policy. Now, I was going to write this down, but it's kind of a long quote, so I just took a screenshot of it because it was typed out, so I want to read it to you. So the fair game policy was codified in 1967 into the church, which was applicable to anyone deemed, quote, an enemy of Scientology, quote, may be deprived of property or injured by any means by any Scientologist without any discipline of the Scientologist, may be tricked, sued, or lied to, or destroyed, unquote. So this kind of becomes their official platform.
They're just a bunch of church of terrorists.
Pretty much. And again, remember, this is just because he lost like his tax exempt status and couldn't embezzle millions of dollars a year.
Yeah.
So he, in the late 60s, goes international, and he basically tries to shop the religion around to other governments like the UK. And they're like, we're not going to ban it, but we're not going to let you open one here.
Mm-hmm.
So other governments around the world, and it's not just the UK, but basically other governments start to reject it. Now, to do this, to go shop the religion around to other countries, Hubbard establishes a navy for the church.
Hell yeah.
Straight up. This is called the Sea Org.
The Sea Org?
Mm-hmm. Well, it will become the Sea Org.
Isn't that like
officially it's the Navy, and then it will later on become the Sea Org.
Like that's what it's called, the Sea Org?
Sea Org, like ocean, sea.
Isn't that like the name of like a cruise line?
I don't think so. Maybe. Who knows? Look it up while we're talking. Actually, I'll wait for you.
Sea Org. I guess not.
Okay. I didn't think it was. So he establishes the Navy, and in he goes out. Basically, he is the head of the church at this point, right? But he is very focused on going global with this religion. He wants it to, because he needs his money. So he goes and he heads up the Navy, and he kind of leaves like the base operations back at home for the Guardian's office to handle. And he goes out with the Navy, and he ends up in a alleged drug and alcohol fueled psychosis, writing the esoteric theory of Xeno. Xeno. And basically this is like their big religious story. This is probably the one that people have heard of. This story tells the tale of an immense disaster on Earth and 75 other planets belonging to a galactic confederacy about 75 million years ago.
My God, he wrote Star Wars.
The leader ends up the leader of this confederacy puts people on Earth and blew them up with hydrogen bombs, which caused engrams to become permanent in humans. So we're all just like descendants of these like traitors from the Galactic Republic or the Galactic Confederacy 75 million years ago. It's also partially the story of so, you know.
That's how Star Wars ends too. Like at the end of everything,
we just become humans again.
Yeah, the final story in Star Wars is people get put on a planet and then hit with hydrogen bombs.
Sick. Okay, so at this point, this is when the Navy becomes the Sea Org. He ends up resigning as the head of Scientology. He's still involved. It's just essentially like, oh, I'm not going to be the CEO, but I'm going to be on the board, you know. And the church ends up funding his voyages and pensions for the Sea Org. They basically are like, here's a blank check. Do what you want with your Sea Org. And he tried to search for, in addition to trying to spread the religion around the globe, he tries to search for evidence of the battle that happened on Earth with the hydrogen bombs all around the globe. Over the next several years, he ends up trying to find refuge for the Sea Org in different countries. Basically, he wanted to kind of start his own little sect from Scientology, but was rejected in every country. At this point, he stayed influential to the church, but the people that were heading up the church kind of recognized the PR crisis that they were in. So they put him in charge of the Guardian's office. So they kind of put him to the, it's like one of the most important offices, but they kind of gave him another job to do.
They made him the Warlock Vanguard.
Yeah, pretty much. And so in his goal of PR rehab, the goal was to remove all public negativity about Scientology. And at this point, this is when they established that cross symbol that they have in their logo. So that wasn't a thing until like the 70s. And so he puts that cross symbol up there, and they began doing something called Operation Snow White, which basically instilled people into government offices. And then they basically spent their entire time searching for files and sources that were negative towards Scientology and destroying them. They wanted no public record of the religion being bad. Then they also did Operation Bulldozer Leak. I don't know who's naming these things, which was a campaign they essentially became lobbyists for Hubbard himself, basically saying that he had no legal liability for the operations of the church. So if the church was going to get punished, Hubbard couldn't get punished with it. They had to separate it because now all of a sudden organizations aren't people. But when it's a tax thing, they are people. U.S. government. At this point, he has a heart attack, and he ends up having to kind of reel in his travels on the Sea Org, and this is where he moves back to the U.S., but he moves to Clearwater, which is the current headquarters of the church. So this is where Clearwater comes into play, and he establishes the Sea Org land base. So, whatever. And at this land base, he allegedly performed that same sex ritual on a member there. Whoa, bug on me. And in June of 1976, 2 Guardian Office agents were arrested by the FBI, and Hubbard starts to get super paranoid because of this. So he had his heart attack, didn't go to the doctor for it, just vibed. He's allegedly committing all these weird sex acts and everything like that, and the FBI he thinks the FBI is closing in on him.
Mm-hmm.
So he ends up moving to a safe house in California. Don't know where in California, but it was up here.
Okay.
The FBI also raided the LA and DC locations of the Church of Scientology, and they found with wiretaps, and they ended up in the raids finding burglary tools and, quote, incriminating documents. Don't know what that is, but that was what was done. At this point, to keep moving, to keep hiding, L. Ron Hubbard flees to Sparks, Nevada.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Reno mention. And then on October 28th, 1976, Quentin Hubbard, who was one of his many kids, was found by Las Vegas police unconscious with a hose connected to his tailpipe of his car into his car, and was pronounced dead.
A classic.
Yeah. So clearly at this point, the Vegas police assert that he committed suicide, and the official statement from the church said that Quentin Hubbard passed away of encephalitis, which is inflammation of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So they just straight up denied the whole suicide thing. Again, attack, don't defend. They could have just said dude had like major depression, and like nothing would have changed. But I think the kind of implication here is that Hubbard was so dissatisfied with the church, because he was part of it, that he ended up taking his own life, which is obviously tragic, right? At this point, it looked like the FBI was going to indict Hubbard for multitude of shit, just probably everything that they could. And he ends up fleeing to the Pacific Northwest because part of the reason that led to this was this thing called Operation Freakout, hashtag Diddy. Okay. Basically, it was like a journalist was writing about the Church of Scientology in a negative light, so of course they attacked him, and that led to an investigation, and then that led to the raids and shit like that. So he ends up fleeing to the Pacific Northwest, where he's like completely anonymous. He's not associated. He's like influential to the church, but he's like, essentially witness protection.
Yeah.
Where he writes, I don't know if it's OT8 or OT8, but it's a document meant for release after his death. And this is where all these quotes are coming from. Where he denounces Jesus as a lover of young boys.
Like he's saying Jesus didn't do that, or he's saying Jesus is bad because he did that?
No, he's saying Jesus likes little boys. Like,
I mean,
Jesus was Kevin Spaceying some people.
At the time, I feel like that was normal to like little boys for the Romans, but
concubines.
Yeah, I don't know if Jesus did that. I don't personally know the guy.
Well, so he goes a little bit further, and he essentially, it's this whole bullshit, right? It's a whole document that essentially culminates in him saying Jesus was a bad person, part and due because he's a lover of little boys, and Jesus kind of needs an enemy. So I am the Antichrist. And so he basically was like, I am the Antichrist. I think I am, but I think that's a good thing.
That's crazy.
Like he finds a way to spin shit in such an entertaining way. Again, should have stuck to Pulp Fiction. Like this would have been a great story.
Yeah.
Like he had it. Just too bad he practiced it, right? So in this kind of self-imposed exile where he's hiding from the feds, he allegedly attempted suicide by e-meter. I don't know how that happened.
I'm gonna lie to death.
But he didn't die because he officially died of a stroke on January 17th, 1986. And corresponding to his role with the Sea Org, his ashes were scattered at sea. So this was in 86, right? So again, he has been there from day one. So basically one of his lieutenants, called David Miscavige, I think it's pronounced, Miscavige. He's currently the head of
damn, so they've only had 2 heads.
They've only had 2 heads. He immediately picked up the role. He was one of Hubbard's lieutenants back in the day. And in 1993, they get their tax-exempt status restored. So that was during the Clinton administration.
Thank God.
Thank God for Bill Clinton, man. To this day, and this is all they're saying, this is their numbers, this is not anyone else's numbers, they claim to have over 11,000 churches in 184 nations. Mind you, there's 192 nations recognized by the UN, including Palestine. So in almost every nation in the world there's Scientology, apparently. And they get 4 million new members each year.
That's just not sustainable.
Yeah, so at this point, since 1986, the entire state of California is Scientology.
Damn, I didn't know. My bad.
Not even since 1986. By the time they got their tax-exempt status back, the entire state of California.
Because what, it's been
4 million plus 10 years. It'd be 1996.
I mean, hold on, let me see. When, since 80?
Well, this was, I don't know when they made this claim, or yeah, the 4 million people, but Hubbard died in 86.
Okay.
So that's 40 years ago. So 40 times 4. 160?
156 million members it claims to currently have.
Well, that's what
since
it would have
1984. That's how many they've gained.
Yeah.
Supposedly.
That's roughly the population of Britain. I think Britain has about 167 million. So sans 2 years from operating in Britain.
There's no way this is right.
What?
Oh, no, hold on. I forgot to add a bunch of zeros. Hold on. 7 billion. I'm trying to see how long it will take them until we have 8
billion people now.
Oh, shit. They added another billion?
Yeah.
8 billion divided by 156 million. Damn, only 52 more years until everybody on the planet is Scientologist.
But that also includes like the current birth rate. So it'll never catch up, but you understand that it's bullshit. Let's see. So
no, I can't wait.
It's still headed by the same guy. And you would think that at this point, maybe they were like, hey, Hubbard was such a controversial figure. Even if we totally buy into his bullshit, we do some PR cleanup. We turn a new leaf. That didn't happen. And through today, there has been a number of troubling allegations against the current leader specifically and the church broadly, that they all officially deny. I need to kind of get that out, that they all officially deny this, because there has been no concrete arrest of the guy or the church. But the FBI has investigated them for things such as human trafficking, forced labor, and child abuse. Or like the big 3 that they kind of go for. Obviously, there's a bunch of financial shit in there, but it's a religion, so.
Yeah.
And I don't have it written down here, but I do remember reading this in that 8 shit where he starts babbling on about the Antichrist and stuff like that. One of the things that he said was that people don't leave Scientology because of outside forces. Like he basically was like, they don't, like, you're not convinced to leave it. They leave because they realize they're in a cult. Like he full on admits in this diary entry, that it is a cult. It is all fake. It is not real. He lied. And that the existence of the church depends on people buying into the cult.
Yeah. And
that is where Scientology is today.
Now they got Tom Cruise. Do you think once this leader dies, they're going to put Tom Cruise in charge?
I don't know how. I know that Tom Cruise is a Scientologist, but I don't know how involved he is.
He's like super influential in the church because he's like a big prolific figure. And so they're like, okay, we elevate him to have more power in the church, and then he goes out and he like talks about it or whatever, it can convince people to join the church.
What I will say is that I think he corroborates all of these alleged things in the church, because they said that, I forget what it was called, but the operation whatever it was called, where they basically said that you got to cut out anything that's negative in your life that detracts you from the church. And he divorced Nicole Kidman, and he doesn't talk to his kids.
Yeah.
So
no, yeah, I know.
I don't know. That could be Nicole Kidman, saying I don't want my kids around Scientology. That might not be him saying like I don't want to be around my kids because they're a bad influence on me. But nonetheless, he is in a situation where he belongs to the church and he does not talk to his ex-wife or kids. They're cordial. He actually is like, they did an interview about it, and someone tried to ask him a question about Nicole Kidman, and he basically like was like, I don't want to talk about her. Like, that's not what I'm here for. He didn't badmouth her or anything like that. So kudos to him, but like,
yeah, At the same time, though, Tom Cruise might be a fake Scientologist, because when COVID was going on, he was like extra sure that everyone was taking the precautions and doing all of that.
I don't know. I don't want to say the veil's slipping, but I could see it, because he's very like pro-union. Like, I don't know his politics, but it doesn't seem like he's super conservative. He works with people who are of all backgrounds, Yeah. He doesn't seem to be, he supports, I mean, he was just at the Sinners premiere, so he clearly supports like black filmmakers. So I think that his love for film probably supersedes his love for the church.
Probably, yeah.
Which is good. I think that's a good thing. So I don't know. Tom Cruise is batshit insane. He's a very insane man, I think. But I think it's a insane that we need in the world.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Moss, I think for me is the most prolific Scientologist, because she is the lead of The Handmaid's Tale.
Is that all she is? Or like, what else has she done? Because I have no idea who this is.
She's done a bunch of stuff, but the other thing that she did was The Invisible Man, the new Invisible Man movie. Do you know what The Invisible Man is? The 1920s movie.
It's a man that's invisible.
Yeah, he's like one of the original monsters.
Okay.
Like the Universal monsters. It was the second movie, actually, coincidentally, it was the second movie in Universal's Dark Universe where they had the Tom Cruise mummy.
Okay.
So, she is the lead of The Handmaid's. You know what The Handmaid's Tale is, right?
I know it's about some handmaids.
It's about a dystopian future where women are baby carriers.
Oh.
It's like an allegory for like the U.S. outlawing abortion. Like, it takes place like in the not too distant future U.S. Like, they just drive cars with like wheels. There's no sci-fi. Like, the guns they use are just guns.
Okay.
So like, the series just ended, but she has played the lead of this like resistance show to a church oppressing women.
I thought it was a book.
It is
like, I know there's like a show,
there's a TV
and like
show,
a play,
but the TV show is
shit.
vastly more popular, obviously, because people in America don't read.
Okay.
But again, it's not lost on me that she's a Scientologist in a cult, playing the part of someone who is resisting a cult. So there's a bunch. Michael Pena is also a Scientologist.
Really?
Yeah, that one was... Here, let me pull up this TikTok video.
That's hella funny.
I'm going to pull it up and I'm going to turn the volume down. I'm just going to read out because I saved it and I didn't want to write everything down. So, but yeah, Michael Pena is one. There is a lot that of people that are there, but I think Tom Cruise and Elizabeth Moss are like the two most famous.
I know it's like decently popular in Hollywood. Do you think it's...
No. Its influence in California is almost non-existent now.
Okay. I guess it was.
It has the main branch, like out in LA, but its headquarters are in Clearwater.
Yeah.
So like it very much. The new lead singer of Linkin Park is a Scientologist.
Okay.
Which sucks because they released a song with her. They released a song and it was really good, and people were like, wow, like this is like a direct like not to, obviously be like, oh, like, you can never feel Chester Bennington's shoes, but like if someone's going to do it, she has the potential to do it. And then after like 48 hours of the song being out, people were like, ooh, we Googled her. Chloe Fineman from SNL. I don't know if you know SNL all that much, but she's apparently, I don't know SNL that much, but apparently she's a very popular person from SNL.
Okay.
Is also a Scientologist. I think probably the most famous Scientologist is actually the ex-Scientologists. Do you know who is it? Lisa Remini? You know the King of Queens?
Yeah.
The wife.
Oh yeah, she did that whole like TV show that was like escaping the church or whatever.
She was like one of the. She has a whole podcast. She has a whole show. So yeah, I mean, it's structured just like the Catholic Church. I mean, it really is. You know, you have the main branch, the Vatican, Clearwater, who franchises out the name and all the imagery and all the shit. They have their whole crimes and doctrines and shit like that everything's based on, their whole biblical tale. And then the jobs of the satellite offices are to collect dues from people. What are they called in the Catholic Church? Like when they pass the thing around?
Fuck, it starts with like a T.
Yeah. Mormons also. I can't remember. I think it's a little bit closer to Mormonism because from my understanding, when you're a Catholic, you don't have to give tithe.
That's what it is. Yeah, smothering tithe is a card of Magic the Gathering.
You don't have to give in the Catholic Church, but it's like encouraged.
Yeah.
In the Mormon Church, I think the expectation is that you give 10% of your income to the church. In this case, obviously there was a whole 10% thing written out, but that's 10% of like, you know, the Sacramento office has to give to Clearwater. Yeah. You know, but who knows how much the Sacramento office is making people donate.
Yeah.
But we'll find out when we go there today.
They're not going to tell you.
No, they're not going to tell me anything, but we'll see. But how do you feel about...
Honestly?
What was your favorite part? Mine was the Sea Org because I remember scrolling the page down, reading this fucking research thing on it, and I was like, at this point, L. Ron Hubbard established the Navy, and I was like, the Navy? This shit got the military? Like,
what is my favorite part? I don't know.
The Ingrams.
The Ingrams, yeah. Honestly, that's probably what it was.
Yeah.
Can't stop thinking about those hexagonal boxes.
It's literally, he's every other con man. I mean, it's the story of Joseph Smith was the same.
Yeah.
Just made something up, and instead of being like, yeah, I made it up, doubled down on it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, he did say he made it up just after he died.
After he died. But that's not public information. That's all like alleged.
Oh.
Like this is all leaked stuff. So it's all alleged. Like there's no official stance.
Okay.
But yeah. The Church of Scientology for you.
Hell yeah.
So next week you got something for us, right?
Yes, I'm going to be talking about Shen Yun. I'm super excited for it because it's crazy. The reason we have sushi in the United States, believe it or not.
I've read a fair amount of stuff into Shen Yun, but I have a feeling you're going to bring some stuff that I don't know.
Yeah.
What I know is that it is essentially capitalist propaganda against communist China, but it kind of devolved into a religious cult.
Yeah, we're going to go from old people stretching just to get a little bit of activity in their life to self-immolation to
Jesus
human
Christ.
Trafficking.
Perfect. Good topics for next week.
Yeah.
So come back next week for our second episode in our cult series.
What would you put in a lead-lined suitcase and bring to the airport?
Who's your favorite Scientologist?
Show me that hole. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hey everyone, it's Cameron again. As I said at the intro to this, we did something special after this week's episode 19. Thank you so much for listening. If you're listening on a podcast app or if you're watching YouTube, thank you so much for sticking. After we recorded today's episode 19, the date, May 25th, 2025, Bodhi and I drove down to Midtown Sacramento, just a few minutes down from my house, and we went to the Church of Scientology. You'll see that this week's episode on Instagram, the thumbnail, and on YouTube, the thumbnails are both photographs of us in front of the church. Bodhi did not want to go in, which is perfectly fine. I decided to go in because I wanted to see what it was like inside. So I'm just going to kind of give you a free flow thought of what it was like inside. And I'm also going to break down these supplies, as you can see if you're watching on YouTube, that they gave me because I got supplies. So to start, the church is located in Midtown Sacramento, and they have a door out front where they display all of L. Ron Hubbard's books. It looks like a bookstore, but it does say the Church of Scientology in big, bold letters right out front, twice, one vertical, one horizontal. You can't enter through those doors. You have to enter through the side door. So I walked through the side door and immediately walked into the best way I can describe it is like the technology from Austin Powers, right? Like that futuristic technology that they weren't quite sure was going to look the way it was. So it kind of looked like 90s futuristic technology, right? But the entryway was this big marble entryway, kind of looked like a fancy hotel almost, and a concierge greeted me almost immediately. The first thing I noticed is that they had hand sanitizer. Remember that this particular religion, quote unquote, does not believe in ailments like that. So hand sanitizer shouldn't be something that they're offering. So that was interesting to me. But I walked in and I presented myself as a graduate student who was studying public policy and writing an essay on the effects of religion on U.S. politics and U.S. public policy. I did panic when they asked my name, because they asked my name and I gave them the name of Tom Schwartz. If you're not a reality TV junkie, you'll know that that is the name of someone from Vanderpump Rules. I don't know why I gave that name. I almost said Tom Cruise, which would have been a dead giveaway. I probably would have been kicked out, right? Because Tom Cruise is a Scientologist. But I said Tom Schwartz. And I just introduced myself. I said that I was going to the University of Nevada, Reno, which is where I did go, but I did not go there for my master's. And so I just introduced myself as a student who was writing public policy. Now, to gain their trust, to make sure that because they do have a tendency to kick people out if you go in there and dick around. One thing that I did do is I told them, I kind of played into their hand, right? One of the things that L. Ron Hubbard said, as I mentioned in the episode, is that people don't leave the Church of Scientology because of outside forces. They leave the Church of Scientology because they realize they're in a cult, right? And so to not break that mold, to not be accusatory and be on the defense or whatever, I preemptively attacked by kind of affirming their own beliefs. So what I did is I told them that I'm writing this paper and that I don't trust the internet. I said, the internet is so untrustworthy and the information is just everywhere, and I can't find a good source that has a good through line through and through, and that I want to get the information directly from the source. At that point, they called over a representative from the church to give me a tour of the first floor, obviously. And they seemed pretty open to it. When I did tell them that I didn't trust what the information was online, they thanked me. They said that I did the right thing by coming to them and not trusting what I saw online. So that's red flag number one. If you paid attention during the episode, any kind of cult should not be afraid of what's being published about them online if they're not doing anything. So that was red flag number one. As we walked to the left, so I walked in straight, and then to the left down the hallway was that bookstore that I mentioned at the beginning. Basically what happened is I walked past one of the e-meters. It's sitting there and it kind of looks like a retro radio. If you would picture like a radio from the Jetsons, that's what it looked like. I was not able to try it out. They did offer, there's a sign there that said, if you want to try this out, let us know. I did not have the time to stay. I wish I did have the time to stay and do all of the tests and see how far I could have gotten. But again, I was just there to see kind of the lay of the land and see how they would react to someone coming in. One of the things that they had is a sign on the door that said, all are welcome here. So they seem pretty receptive to most people, which is interesting. But as I got up to the book portion, or kind of the informational pamphlet and bookstore portion of the church, there was a bunch of TV screens with cushy benches right in front of them, in a quote unquote educational center where they had a bunch of church propaganda playing of all these informational videos on what the church stands for and all its missions and all of its things and operations that it does. And there were people in there actually watching it. It looked like there were people actually in there curious. Now, I don't know if they were seriously curious or not, but there were people in there watching it. In the center of all this was kind of, if you kind of picture, if you've ever been to like a Barnes and Nobles, how they have like that help desk in the center of the store, like one of those, right? As I walked up, the person there immediately locked their computer and shut it off so that I couldn't see what was on the screen. So there's a lot of air of secretism. So the first thing that they provided me, which I don't know if I have it in this stack of papers here, is a business card to the... Oh, I have it over here. Hold on. It's a business card with a QR code. And it has the tune-in frequencies for the Tampa Bay broadcast for the Church of Scientology's broadcast channel, because they do have a public broadcast channel. And it has availability to stream on Apple TV, Amazon, Roku, Android TV, and iOS. It's on DirecTV and AT&T. It's not on Comcast, notably, and Spectrum also offers it. So they immediately started giving me stuff to visit the website. The website leads back to its main one in Clearwater. I basically asked if they had any free informational stuff that they could give me, and they gave me a bunch of things. The most prominent that they gave me was a DVD. This is an actual pamphlet that has a full hard disk in it. They seem to be understanding that they can't give out USBs for some reason, that they haven't modernized to that. Their system that they were using was a very archaic version of Windows on their computer from the split second that I saw it. But she basically was like, oh, you have a game system, right? You're pretty young. You're a student. You could just play this on your game system. So I watched it. I watched the entire DVD, and it comes with a bunch of chapters in it. So the first thing is the message from the Church of Scientology, followed by its beliefs and practices, human rights, anti-drug, the way to happiness, Narconin, applied scholastics, and volunteer ministries. It's a bunch of bullshit. I'm gonna level with you, right? So let me read out to you, because I took some notes on the first portion, which is the beliefs, right? Because that's what I really wanted to get at, was what does the Church of Scientology say is their beliefs? Effectively, one of the biggest things that I've noticed is that a lot of their beliefs align with the theory of American democracy. So they kind of play into that hand, right? But then they take it a step further. So they believe that all men, and see if you can pick out a pattern on this, all men, no matter race, color, or creed, are created equal. All men have inalienable rights to, quote, their own religious beliefs, practices, and performances. All men have an inalienable right to their own lives. All men have an inalienable right to their sanity. All men have inalienable rights to their own defense. All men have an inalienable right to conceive, assist, choose, or support their own organizations, churches, governments. All men have an inalienable right to think freely, talk freely, write freely their own opinions. All men have an inalienable right to counter, utter, or write upon the opinions of others, which is not lost on me that L. Ron Hubbard very much did not like people writing upon his opinion, but he believes that all men have the right to speak on others' opinions. So that's not really lost on me there, that there's a little bit of irony and double standard there. All men have an inalienable right to the creation of their own kind. All men have an inalienable right to the souls of men. All souls of men have the rights of men. So basically saying that souls are people. And all men... I'm kind of getting a little flustered here. The study of Dianetics should not be alienated. And remember, Dianetics is that program that he started in the beginning, which kind of rejects modern medicine in lieu of essentially being positive, right? The study of Dianetics should not be alienated from religion or condemned in non-religious fields, right? So it's a self-serving set of principles, right? And then they also believe that no agency other than God has the power to suspend or set aside the rights overtly. No power to suspend or set aside any of these rights in a covert or overt fashion. And then they also believe that man is basically good. That's a quote. Man is basically good. The through line here is that I don't know if this is just not updated, right? Because in the videos that they have a lot of women, but you notice how it says men. It mentions no women. It doesn't say mankind. It doesn't say humans. It's man. So I'm not 100% sure if they are accepting of women having these rights, even though they say at certain points all humans. Now, the following portion of this kind of what is Scientology about chapter in the DVD talked about what do Scientologists say about Scientology. And here's some notes that I wrote down. A lot of white people. I only counted 4 people of color in the entire portion of the video. There were a lot of women present talking about Scientology, but again, remember that most of these phrases for the inalienable rights portion say all men are created equal. All men have inalienable rights to X, Y, and Z. And a lot of the followers tend to market this thing as a humanitarian effort. And they tend to be all religious. So that's actually something that I experienced inside the church. So the 2 people that I talked to, one was born Catholic and converted to Scientology. The other has a son who grew up as a Scientologist and is now a Baptist, right? The issue that I get from all this is that it appears that Scientology is really still in that hard PR rebrand, right? Because throughout this entire video, where there are countless sections, as you can see, countless sections, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 chapters, and each chapter having 3 or 4 subchapters, sometimes with those subchapters having subchapters. I watched this entire thing. It took me over 2 hours. I didn't get an answer as to what Scientology is at all. Ever. It never gave me an answer. I read through these 3 publications that they gave me. No answer in Scientology. I have a pamphlet here that talks about what Scientology is, and there is no answer in here about what Scientology is. But you know what there is in here? Ads for all of L. Ron Hubbard's books. You know what else there is in here when it talks about the difference between philosophy of Scientology and other philosophies in the world? Ads for L. Ron Hubbard's books. Everything ended in this DVD. Every chapter ended with a recommendation to read a book that you have to purchase written by L. Ron Hubbard. And it sometimes was the same book and sometimes it was a different book. But there were at least 6 different books that it recommended in just the first chapter alone. The first chapter of Beliefs and Practices of Scientology. 6 different books that it recommends you to buy and read to actually understand what Scientology is about. Now, I'm not a particularly religious person, but I can tell you that the major religions in the world, such as Catholicism or Christianity, Islam, Judaism, they all are monotheistic. They believe in one God, and their idea of what those religions are is that you should be faithful to this benevolent God who knows all, sees all, and has its own reasons and creates commandments, right? Creates rules and morals for people, and you should follow those. There is none of that here. The only thing that it says is that they believe in human rights, and it's not lost on me that they have a bunch of public service announcements that they sponsored, and we're going to talk about that in just a second, that talk about human trafficking and labor violations, yet they're being investigated for that by the FBI, and so was L. Ron Hubbard back in the 70s, and they're still being investigated by the FBI today for that, and the leader and the church in large have been accused of that. Of course, they deny that, but they're accused of it. Now, let's talk about these other publications that they gave me, right? So we have, these are newspaper style publications. I mean, they fold out into giant newspaper style publications. They say a bunch of nothing, right? But one thing I picked up, the church is everywhere. There is a lot of institutions that this church is in everyday life that a lot of people don't realize. You've ever heard of the program drugfreeworld.org? Yeah, Drug Free World. Scientology sponsored. They sponsored this group. They take a very hard stance against drugs, and they assert that things like marijuana are gateway drugs, which is clinically false, right? But we know that Scientologists don't follow clinical evidence. They don't follow the mainstream medical advice, right? Now, of course, they advocate against the use of hard drugs, which I don't really disagree with, right? But that's the thing, is in this whole DVD that they gave me, throughout their non-answer of what Scientology was, one of the things that I picked up was that they really tried to apply broadly to an audience. They essentially would say things like, oh, do you ever feel frustrated? Who doesn't feel frustrated, right? And they poise Scientology as a fix to all your problems rather than advocating for you being a better person, right? Now, that's not to say that other religions don't poise themselves as being a fix to problems, but that's all that Scientology advocated for, right? They also talked about their ministries, right? They talk in here about how they go to other countries. They talk about how they help in places like South Africa, and they make things about how they're very pro-human rights. They are a co-signer of the Human Rights Declaration from the UN, right? But they talk about things like people being convinced and people being, having, experienced these organizations that they do. One of the big ones was this right here, the Way to Happiness, which is another book sponsored by the church that they're selling people to improve their lives, like in Israel, right? In South Africa, where there's apartheid, they talk about how these programs helped there. And that's not to say that they didn't help, but they're selling the cure to things. And if they really were a religion, they would charitably give these things away, but instead they're selling the cures to things that aren't actually happening, right? And another thing that really, really caught my eye here, on the back of this, the truth news about drugs, right? All of the articles are super, super vague. And then they also give these testimonies, right? See if you can pick out a pattern in these testimonies. Police officer, Arkansas, UNA says, the most important impact I see from using this program was opening up to kids to why they shouldn't be using drugs. It doesn't tell them to just say no. It illustrates what could happen if they choose to go down that path. The materials make it so much easier to focus on getting the class engaged in the lesson rather than trying to start on this subject from the ground up. Police Chief Wisconsin, USA says these materials provide a wide variety of information on specific drugs that we see in our community. My officers have been able to pick up the course quickly for easy delivery, and we use it with 8th and 9th graders. They are starting high school. Law enforcement in Brazil, who knows what law enforcement in Brazil says, quote, your materials and resources to address this very dangerous issue. I noticed that the students were very interested in the materials and the information. Considering that the community that I work in is very needy and many families benefit from the sale of drugs, the material shows children the actual danger of drugs. My work with your program is very gratifying because I believe it is always possible to change the direction of a person's life with the correct information. Police officer in Kenya says, the materials make it easy to eradicate the substance abuse. They allow me to help a community understand the effects of drugs. The materials are a solution to end drug problems in my area. And a police officer from South Africa says, I feel like a professional when I use these materials. I'm able to raise awareness and educate people about how drugs will impact their lives. The booklets are very popular with both teachers and parents. No names, just titles. There's no sources in these. There's nothing. It's just words written down, no sources. We have no idea if we can verify these things as actually happening and being true. Another thing is that these drug programs are full of police officer testimonies. But guess what? The human rights section of this DVD covers a lot. Government oppression of people through things like Tiananmen Square and crackdown on racial equity protests, like the protests for Rodney King and the protests for Michael Brown, right? So are you pro-police or are you not? What do you stand for? And that's the thing, is the Church of Scientology was not able to give me an answer for what they stand for because they want to lure people in and get people to join up, because all of these things are PR rehabilitation thing, right? We talked about this in the episode. It's all PR rehabilitation. So I could do a whole breakdown on this. We're already at almost 20 minutes at this point for this epilogue, but there's just so much to go about. I could do a whole breakdown. It would be hours long, right? But the point is that it seems that the church cannot nail down a mess, and it cannot nail down what it wants to be in order to not present itself as a cult. But the problem is that it's already done the damage of the attack, don't defend motto. And because of that, all of this stuff makes no sense. It makes no sense to anyone who's not susceptible, but it preys on the people who are susceptible by making sure that it broadens its messaging and broadens what it's asking and broadens what audience it's trying to target to people who can say, hey, I relate to that. But guess what? Everyone can relate to that. It talks about, have you ever had a bad day? Who hasn't had a bad day? That doesn't mean that you need Scientology, right? It doesn't mean that you need to reject modern medicine and reject everything in your life and, go through these auditing sessions where you confess everything and everything that you've done wrong and everything, and devote your life to this religion, right? It preys on people who are susceptible and people who are easily convinced. So be critical, right? Scientology actually teaches you to be critical. So take that advice. Be critical and be skeptical of this stuff, right? If something like this comes along in your life where it's saying, we have the solution to everything, right? Has there ever been anything in your life that's been the solution to everything that isn't money? Probably not, right? So all this to say, I went into this with an open mind, not that I was ever going to join Scientology or speak in defense of Scientology. I very clearly believe it's a cult. But all this to say, they're not doing a real good job of convincing someone who can see through it that it's not a cult, that it's not something fishy, right? If you are someone who is easily susceptible to this, be skeptical, ask questions, don't believe everything they tell you. And thank you for listening to episode 19 of the Learning Curve podcast. We did not get a chance to read socials, and I know that we're not that great at that. So I am going to take this time to just quickly read them off so that we get them in this episode. If you'd like to watch us on YouTube, if you're listening right now, our YouTube is a Learning Curve Pod. We would greatly appreciate you. Just like and subscribe, leave us a comment, tell us what you think about Scientology, what you think about cults. We are on Bluesky at learningcurvepod.bsky.social. We're on Twitter at learningcurvepod, Instagram at learningcurve.podcast, and we are also on TikTok at learningcurvepodcast. And lastly, Bodhi's Twitch, which he streams on with me, is shrink3dink, and my Twitch is chef cram, CRAM _. Once again, my name is Cameron. Thank you so much for listening to Learning Curve Podcast. We hope that this episode has taught you something, and thank you for sticking around to the end of this very, very long podcast. See you later.